When we reflect on our thoughts, we realize that we are always thinking, isn't it? Every night before going to sleep, we reflect on what we did throughout the day and we plan for the next day. And morning when we wake up, we recollect what was the plan for the day. Even during the day when we are performing all our activities, we are constantly thinking. So this video is about nature of thinking. We will learn about different types of thinking and how thinking is the basis for the cognitive process in humans. Humans are unique in this aspect and we are endowed with this ability of thinking. So anything that we are doing, whether it is shopping, cooking, presenting our work at office, or even when we drift away to sleep, even during our sleep, we are thinking until the mind goes to REM sleep. So there's not a single minute that we are not thinking. Therefore, it's very important to understand the different concepts under thinking and cognition. So what exactly is cognition? So it is the umbrella term for all higher order mental processes like thinking, decision making, language memory, and more. So we always try to understand things, people, situations around us. When we are awake, we are thinking, reasoning, deciding, solving problems. So what happens during these processes? We are making decisions, decision making, problem solving, all these happen during these processes. So most of our waking hours and even during sleep and even during our dreams, there are some cognitive activities happening. So thinking is something that happens between receiving a stimulus and producing a response. It is about collecting information from our environment, comparing the different information, organizing information until a decision is reached. For example, if I want to buy a watch, I will research about different brands and then I compare their prices, the quality, the features in the watch, if it's a smart watch or a regular watch, and then I decide which one I want to buy. So all this is thinking. It's an example for the different processes of thinking. So thinking involves processing, manipulation, and analysis of information, any new information that we gather from our environment or information that's already stored in our memory. There are two types of thinking. So autistic thinking is something very private and it uses symbols with personal meaning and it's not about solving problem. It doesn't have any direction. For example, daydreaming. And there's another type of thinking, as the name suggests, directed thinking is goal oriented and it is aimed at solving problems or creating something new. And an example for this is, like they said, solving problems or finding the way to our destination. So usually thinking is organized and goal directed. Any activity that we do, there is a goal, right? Whether it is cooking a meal or solving a problem. Every activity is goal oriented and has a purpose. So thinking is internal. We cannot know what a person is thinking. We can only judge from the way they behave or their actions. For example, a person playing chess, we can only know what the person was thinking or strategizing by his next move. Therefore, thinking is an internal mental process and it becomes obvious only through overt behavior or observable behavior. So our thinking depends on our knowledge and a knowledge is represented in the form of mental images or words, either of them. When we want to revisit any place that we have already visited, then we imagine that place or recall that place in the form of images in our mind. But if suppose I want to buy a storybook for myself, then my decision will be based on knowledge of authors, which genre I want to buy, etc. So this way, thinking is based on concepts or words. So what are mental images? They are mental representations of sensory experiences which are stored in our memory, and we use them when we are thinking. So we usually use mental images when I ask you to imagine something, like imagine a cat on a tree with a raised tail, or visualize yourself standing in front of the Taj Mahal, or reading a map by forming spatial images, mental images. And they also say that mental manipulations of images are very similar to what our actions will be after our thoughts. So usually we visualize the action before we actually perform the action. We will discuss more about mental representations in class with a lot more examples and how we use these mental images when we are thinking. Now, what are concepts? So we said that the basic building blocks of thinking are mental images and concepts. A concept is a symbolic construction representing common features of different objects and events. Basically, they are the categories or the classifications that we make so that we can understand the world around us. So classification is done by categorizing new objects by matching their features to existing categories. Like when I say apple, you will automatically categorize it as a fruit. When I say table, you will automatically categorize it under furniture, and dog under the category of animals. So any new object, we look for its characteristics and we match it with the characteristics of the existing category. This is classification. So mental representation of concepts. A concept refers to a class of objects, ideas, or events sharing common properties. That's how we mentally represent or visualize objects as belonging to different class or categories. And concepts are helpful because they help us to organize knowledge as we can use them quickly without much effort. There are two types of concepts, logical or artificial, and natural concepts. Logical concepts have strict rules and they have to fall within the criteria. Like a square, how we define a square, it should have four equal sides and four right angles. But natural concepts don't have very strict rules. They are based on prototypes and our daily experiences. What is a prototype? It's a very typical example for a category. For example, a typical example of fruit we usually think of is a banana or an apple, but we don't think of tomato or cucumber as fruits, though they are botanically classified under fruits. So these are the two types of concepts. So this is how we use prototypes under natural concepts. Any new item that we encounter, we compare it with the prototype, and if many features match, we include it in that category. So concepts are primarily understood through their defining features, and natural concepts can be represented as visual images, and concepts are also in the form of schemas. We learned under the chapter of learning, Jean Piaget came up with the concept of schemas. These are cognitive frameworks which represent any class or category, and these are more complex than concepts. The schema for each class can differ according to each person. Like, for example, they say schema of God. For you, the schema of God may include spirituality. For someone else, it may include religion or idol worship. So concepts, again, are different. They have different characteristics. So with this, we come to the end of the topic, nature of thinking. I will meet you again in the next video. Thank you so much.